Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to What is Truth, episode 68. I'm here with the Bishop David William Parry. There's a yoke for you. And my name is John Barnwell, and I'm here in the city of Detroit, Detroit, the Straits. And David, Reverend Bishop David, is in the city of London, in sometimes merry old England. And today we're going to have a very special guest in that he's showing that he's really doing the work, and he's spread his acumen far and wide amongst quite a roster of individuals on his separate podcast. So I thought it'd be fun and interesting to bring him into a dialogue with the Reverend David here. And that's Tommy Carrigan. And he has Tommy's podcast, TPC, on other platforms. I don't even know if I can mention him here without getting in trouble, you know. That's the world we're living in. And so, anyways, Reverend David, how are you doing?
Well, Happy New Year, John. That's a really good question. I've just spent 2 hours preaching to the online Persian Christian Fellowship. Good friends of mine, great chums of mine. My other half is Persian at the end of the day. But 2 hours sort of takes it out of you. I haven't had the chance to change. I don't normally wear my collar. And in answer to that, yes, I've actually been a bishop for some time. I prefer David or Reverend or Pastor, I suppose. There are three types of Catholic. You get your Roman, which of course is the vast majority. But I mean, people tend to forget there also are Alexandrian Catholics and Antiochian Catholics, all of which are in not full communion, partial communion with Rome. Maybe one day in full communion again, who knows? And I'm from the Antiochian liberal, that very maligned word, that very misused word nowadays. I mean, it's all Catholic in the sense that we respect the Bishop of Rome, but and as a figurehead, yeah, that's okay. As some sort of symbol, yeah, no problems there. Papal infallibility over your dead body. So yeah, that's the sort of thing where we draw the line. Councils, maybe not huge groups of people over centuries, maybe not a person. So we tend to be, I mean, Alexandrian Catholicism is actually older than Roman Catholicism. So take that up, you schnoz. Most of those priests are married, and they'd think it was really odd. Whereas us wicked Antiochians believe everybody has a share at the table of Christ Jesus. Oh my God, what a terrible thing to say. So how am I? We survived Christmas and the New Year. Actually, it was delightful. I was expecting more of a siege mentality with the Tories, the powers that be, playing very duplicitous games with us mere electors. But yeah, I mean, Christmas went around. It was really lovely. I was up to my proverbial in cooking fat and oil because it's my want to cook for everybody over the festive season. John is looking horrified. I don't think me mentioning cooking can. Believe me, you'd be lucky. I'm a half decent chef. So yeah, and my partner and I, my husband and I, that should set the cat amongst the pigeons for certain people. Actually went away to a hotel for New Year's Eve as London descended into social chaos. I believe the governments of Wales, remember it's a United Kingdom, in other words, meaning it's more than one country. If you say, are you English to a Welshman on a Friday or Saturday night in Cardiff, make sure you've got medical cover. Yeah, and the same would be in Scotland. We're not the same people. We're not the same history. We're not the same ethnicity, and the same with the Irish. But it's a united kingdom. It's one group, as it were, or different groups under one governing body. I mean, they actually closed down the nightclubs, etc., in Scotland and Wales. Therefore, what was meant to have happened was loads of people were getting ferried in here so they could get slaughtered on New Year's Eve and cause endless trouble. So my partner and I did the half decent thing of going to a hotel with a lovely bottle of champagne and some marron glacé. Noel Coward was completely right. Is there something genuinely on the verge of the secular and the heavenly? Yes, it's marron glacé. It's something in the middle. And enjoying absolutely everything to do with the festive seasons. Although I decided I like actual physical Christmas cards as opposed to virtual. There's just something more human about receiving a little picture of Santa Claus through the post than all these endless. And I love the electronic versions, but it's just nice and it's sweet to do it the old-fashioned way. And I'm sick of this happy holidays stuff. Merry Christmas. ... Happy New Year. Why can't we say that? Let's maximize the love. Let's maximize the festivity as opposed to reducing it all as various people want us to do. That's me, John. How was your festive period?
Well, it actually was really very nice. And yeah, over here in the colonies, we say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, but I learned from the Beatles many, many years ago that they say Happy Christmas, Merry New Year. So you guys...
They're from Liverpool.
And I just got a message from Tommy, our guest today, and he realized he has to download the correct browser to run this particular stream service, StreamYard, which I really like, by the way. And so he shall be with us shortly, as he's young enough to be tech savvy. He's not an old wizened gray soul like Reverend David and myself. Although I'm sure I've got it on David as far as the length of my stay here in this particular illusion. But so very soon we shall have another person joining us. We tend to shy away from having guests or a bunch of guests on here because we speak in paragraphs. We don't just speak in sound bites, which is the common parlance today. And so it's difficult to have a conversation when you have people speaking in paragraphs because you tend to get an overlap of conceptual activity. And by the time your turn comes up again, what you wanted to say no longer has the proper context. So it's kind of hard to do a repartee with 3 or more individuals, although I'm not against it. But we did it a long time with Leo Zagami and Roseanne Barr and Lowell and Jerusalem. And that was really cool. I really liked it. But that being said, that was the challenge on that particular program, especially with that many people. By the time what you wanted to say comes around, the context has long since left the room. But that being said, hopefully our guest will join us soon here. And as far as myself, I came up with this topic, meditation, East versus West. Originally it was meditation and prayer, East versus West, but I was having trouble creating the image for the show, and so I truncated the title, but we will include prayer. And I see Tommy's chair. Let's add Tommy's chair to the stream. Okay, there's Tommy's chair.
Sorry.
And this is a special broadcast here. And Tommy's running a little late because he had to meditate. So I guess if you're doing a show on meditation, that's a good thing.
I apologize. I have to meditate before every
no
podcast.
apologies needed. Actually, I was flat-footed today. I spent so much time preparing for today's show and structuring it that I'd forgotten to send links to you too.
Well, fair enough. That's
and so that makes it even more interesting.
Hey, am I good on like the picture or camera?
Yeah,
or
you're fine,
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, you got it all going. You're young, we're a couple old dudes.
Nonsense. We're all old.
You shouldn't worry about it.
Well, I figured.
Although I don't know why you're blushing.
I always blush. That's just because I'm a pale white Irish Catholic guy from New Hampshire. Right. That's just my status.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I fervently get suntanned, and if it gets cloudy for a few days, it just goes away.
Yeah, no, I don't even do that. No, I've had people ask why I'm blushing, and I'm like, that just happens. It just happens. It just I start turning red from lights, not even from the sun. So it's yeah, and
well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be great to bring you on here, and I think it's an ideal situation when you bring on a guest that you try to find something that's in their proverbial wheelhouse. And being that I've done a couple of conversations with Tommy on his podcast, and I managed to figure out that he has a proclivity towards meditation. And I thought, well, that's a wonderful thing to hear a young person say that. Because I was just speaking with a friend, and I'm not going to call him out by saying who, the other day, but he was sharing with me how perplexed he was because his daughter was entirely dependent on distractions, that she always had to have somebody to interact with or some kind of medium. And you see that today. I mean, we all got to enjoy that over the holidays, where you visit the kids or the grandkids, and there's faces staring into smartphones. So that's not quite communion in my conception of the world, but there could be communication of sorts. And I think that what we're going to come to now is like, what are the subtle distinctions from somebody starting out to try and get an assessment? What are the subtle distinctions, and meaning east and west in meditation and prayer? And so I'm somewhat familiar with our guest here's spiritual path, and that he's a meditator. And so last we spoke, I managed to share some content from my encounter with the Dalai Lama and Thomas Vinyakya, and also a common interest in the past where I knew Baba Ram Dass, and I kind of figured that Tommy'd be real comfortable in that playground, shall we say. And so I thought what that would bring us into something, and I recall that Reverend David is a fan of Baba Ram Dass. Oh, Baba, excuse me, not Bubba. I thought he was from New Jersey, but no, he's not. Anyway, so Tommy, give us a little recap of some of your background so that people know who they're listening to.
Oh, I think I've managed to get the about me down really quickly. Really long story short, I graduated the University of Georgia in 2013 as a pre-med major, bio major, got into medical school, got into pharmacy school, was really dead set on that life. Decided right after I graduated I didn't want to go to medical school, and then not long after that, April 2014, I lost my oldest sibling to suicide, and that kind of threw me on this just insane track of, it was a mixture of like midlife crisis at 23 because I had just spent 4 years studying at UGA instead of partying with the 30,000 beautiful women. It was a mixture of existential crisis because I just had a death. You know, I was 23, my brother was 27. And then also it was not long, the day after I graduated was my first experience ever with psychedelics. So it was like these three things that normally are staggered throughout your life kind of happened within like 90 days. So needless to say, it broke my brain. And for several years, I just kind of plummeted downwards, just stopped exercising, stopped studying, stopped doing anything, gained a bunch of weight, like 70 pounds, drugs, alcohol, everything, just distractions, because didn't want to address what was inside. 2016, I became suicidal myself, and I moved home to my parents' house at age 26 up here in Maryland. For 3 years, I taught myself graphic design. And then one day, kind of on a whim, December 12th, 2019, I just started the podcast. I had a friend, and I was like, you're episode 1, we're doing it. And he was like, all right. And it's kind of spiraled from there. I've done 657 episodes. I got booted off YouTube in August 2021 for talking about that which must not be spoken about by Dr. Malone and Dr. McCullough. I'll leave it at that so you guys don't get booted. And it's kind of been a crazy thing. The podcast is upgraded over the years, and I'm making some money on it, enough to have a little apartment. I'm happier than I've ever been. It's been the last 2 years has been the craziest kind of spiritual journey of getting to talk to people from all walks of life. It's forced me to open my mind. It's forced me to see my own biases. And I mean, even looking back a year, and I look at some episodes and I cringe. And I can only imagine in a year, I'll look back at this episode and cringe. But to me, that means I'm growing, because if you don't cringe looking at an old video of yourself, you've been stagnant. So that's me, and I hope to keep growing this podcast. And yeah, it's about the whole. And I like to meditate, and I've meditated since 2009 every day. It's really the only thing that keeps me sane. I hope that's was an adequate explanation of who I think I am.
That was excellent. Reverend David, why don't you chime in here, because I'm sure that your wizened path can shed some light on some of the comments that he's made.
I think, yeah.
Well, have I got a wizened? Oh, God, outgunned by Americans. Everywhere I look, there are Americans. I don't tend to think of the colonies, Mr. Barnwell. I tend to think of the noble Americas, where people escaped while they still had a chance from the king. And all of us slaves left back here have to do as we're told. No, I saw by accident one of your shows with young Tommy. A pleasure to meet you, Tommy.
You as well.
And loved the energy that was clearly there, along with the tint of danger, because we've got to be careful here in case we are booted up. And I loved it all. So yes, I wanted John to approach Tommy, because I need a cut of that action. I need my slice of the action. Because it looked fun. I mean, meditation. I mean, I don't know which type you do. I mean, certainly, what was it, Twin Peaks boy? I mean, he does TM, doesn't he? Transcendental meditation. And there are so many. I mean, Baba Ramdas. So yeah, I mean, I knew people that knew him. I can't say, much more than that. I mean, I've never had the chance of going to the east, bit of the east that I want to. Not that I didn't want to go to Central Asia, because that's on nearly China. But and what are they? They're into the esoteric arts more than meditation. I mean, you still get actual living shamanism from a tradition that's never finished, because the wilderness and the vastness of the geography. So not even the Soviet Union could bring it to a halt, though it did try. So yeah, I'm more used to that sort of, waving my feathers and tambourine around and doing strange dances. I knew he'd have to do that. Yeah. Yeah. The Tungus have my vote. So yeah, I mean, I have practiced meditation from time to time myself. I'm very interested in what Tommy has to say because he's a regular. I'm a regular prayer geek. My rosary, which is around my neck at this very moment, is always to hand. There's a pun there somewhere because it's around my neck. And you know, I say, oh God, this will age and date me. I say prayers every morning and every evening. Well, I am something to do with the clergy. I suppose it's rather expected. I pray for everyone that asks me. I've started this weird YouTube thing where I've asked everyone to pray with me for an hour a month, and I'm getting inundated. The whole idea is we sit there praying, love. Not that I'm spouting and giving advice, right? And if I need to do it, I'll do it. But that's not the idea. We all bloody just get together and pray. So the criticism so far is we love the show, but why didn't you say anything? It's prayer, you see. It's prayer. That's the whole point. It's prayer. So I don't know how I'm going to do the second episode because we're getting reasonably good feedback. But yeah, I'm more of your prayer buff, your prayer geek. I suppose if we are looking at the Athenites, which is something I'm more comfortable with in terms of discussion. I mean, I probably know as much as the average general layman when it comes to Indian meditation. And I've known people that practice it. I've actually tried Tibetan meditation. But, you know, it's just so far from where we are. And I'm not saying those techniques don't transfer between cultures, although I'm skeptical that it's made far too easy for them to travel between cultures. And then actually you end up losing some of the core. I mean, wasn't it Nichiren in Japan who wanted every single Zen practitioner burnt at the stake? What a very Western attitude. So they're bringing Chinese stuff here, and they're polluting Japanese culture. So I think what was at the back of that was, what have you got there? You've got a series of disembodied techniques. And what are they doing? Because surely they need some sort of cultural content. And if they get that, all of a sudden you're talking about China instead of Japan. I think that was at the back of all of that. So, yeah, I admire everyone with Tommy's discipline. And I think we all need to practice genuine and regular prayer or meditation or both. Although I'm skeptical, as I round this bit off, that Boris Johnson's don't worry, John, I'm not going to make it anything that will get us threatened. One of the vast initiatives of the present administration is that if kids get sent to detention at school, they should be taught transcendental meditation instead. I can really see that working. So to bring peace and harmony to the classroom, how about paying the teachers a decent wage, a real curriculum, and something they might enjoy studying? But silly me, that's old school getting in the way yet again. I don't know if that answered anybody.
Yes, always good. You're good at uplifting, and the mystery of the consecration. That's David's area of mastery, shall we say, the consecration of the hosts, the Holy Eucharist. Yeah. And that, to me, embodied in the Last Supper of Leonardo da Vinci. And in there, it's interesting because we say over and over again, ad nauseum, perhaps, art is higher than philosophy. And so somebody would say, okay, fine, you're an art snob who doesn't know anything about philosophy. Well, that may be so. But no, I'm basing that on an indication by Rudolf Steiner, because if you get into his presentations regarding human activity and the archetypal expression that is essentially the zodiac. And mind you, if you're doing personal work, it's sevenfold. If you're trying to work in a group, the basis is 12. And then if it goes into more than 12, then it's a recapitulation. So there's 12 fundamental archetypes, just as there's 12 pairs of cranial nerves. And there's 7 relational vortices of the heart with the 12-petaled lotus of the heart. So you have that mirroring again within the heart chakra. But in understanding that, you can get into the Apocalypse of St. John, and you see that there's a very clear expression of the sevenfold and 12-fold. So that's what that is called apocalypticism or apocalyptic thinking, and that is part and parcel of what's called esoteric Christianity. And mind you, Rudolf Steiner himself, in his lecture cycle, The Background of the Gospel of St. Mark, referred to the gospel writers as occultists. And that's a real shocker for most people within the Christian community. But again, keeping in mind what that word actually means, because occult means hidden. It doesn't mean that you're a member of some weird group, but that you're having within your context of being the supersensible worlds. And so that is the ultimate key to understanding what he means by occult. That which is hidden, that which is working in a way in which your earthly sense at life and activities are not aware, unless you bring it into that kind of a relationship. And so the understanding of the purpose and intent of meditation and prayer is to maintain a link with the supersensible realm, which I think is specifically important today. Let me see if I have the right quote here. Yes. I know that some people don't like it when I read quotes, but this is an important one, and I'm going to read it anyways, because it'll give us a talking point. And this is from a lecture that Rudolf Steiner gave in Dornach on September 29th, 1917. It's in his Collected Works, volume 177, and the title of the lecture is The Driving Force Behind Europe's War. And he says, and I quote, "Chaos has arisen because reality is considered in an unspiritual way, and the world of the spirit cannot be ignored with impunity. You may think it is enough to live with thoughts and ideas that are wholly derived from the physical world. It is what people generally think today, though this does not make it true. The most completely and utterly wrong idea humanity has ever had is, to put it simply, that the spirits will put up with being ignored. You may consider it egotistical and selfish on their part, but the terminology is different in their world. Egotism or not, the spirits take their revenge if they are ignored here on earth. This is a law, an iron necessity. One way to characterize the present time is to say that the present human chaos is the revenge of the spirits who've been ignored for too long. I have often said, both here and elsewhere, a mysterious connection exists between human consciousness and the destructive powers of decline and fall in the universe." End quote. There's more, but I think that's enough to get the point across. And so that's quite a statement. And it's really thinking outside the box for most anyone. But yet lately, I've gotten so many people that they're discussing, they're trying to figure out the crazy things that are going on and why in the world is this happening. And there you see Rudolf Steiner's clearest indication that what happens is when we get so caught up in the life of the senses that we don't have a spiritual path, that we don't consecrate our meals, that we don't pray, that we don't meditate, what we're doing is we're creating starvation of the spiritual world. We're starving the spirits, we're starving the realm of the dead even. And so that's a troubling thought, but it's nice to know that you can affect this. People go, well, what should I do? What can I do? Well, stop doing that. Start participating in the spiritual world through some path or another. And that has been my trajectory here for the duration of this program. Okay, but I tend to soft pedal things, but things are getting so strange now. We've entered into the realm of high strangeness, if you want to use terminology from ufology. And there are people that are positing that there's something ufological going on in the world today, or demoniacal, and there are many different realms in which beings dwell. And the point that Rudolf Steiner is trying to make is that people are so caught off in the sense world that we've lost touch with the spiritual world, that even only a few generations ago, or even a generation ago, had a much more pervasive claim on that realm. Today has become so secular that there's really a void. And it's interesting because elsewhere, Rudolf Steiner says that if somebody confronts you regarding spiritual science, anthroposophy, Rudolf Steiner's work and all that, and they have a real problem dealing with it, in a sense, that's okay, because, and he gives the account of a person that he knew, one of his students, who had a relative that really gave him a hard time for being involved with anthroposophy and spiritual science and all of that, who passed on. This individual was given a hard time, passed on, and Rudolf Steiner had indicated that now this being was receiving great comfort from the study group that his relative was participating in on the Gospel of St. John, and that it was clearing up for him a lot of misunderstandings about the state of being in which he existed now that he had passed away. And so this also weaves into what is our relationship to the world of the dead, because we're starving them too, because they can't participate, they can't read books. People don't understand. Spiritual beings can't read books either. The task is to put together study groups, preferably of 12, if you could pull it off, and do oral sharing amongst yourselves of the lectures of Rudolf Steiner, and approach it in that manner. We used to do things like that. Out where I'm living, out in the boondocks north of Detroit, I don't know that I could even find anybody. So I'm more of a sevenfold kind of guy lately. But I think you can kind of work into this concept a little bit, Tommy. What do you think?
I'm getting some feedback. It's coming. I'm here. Okay, never mind. It's gone now.
Is it gone?
Yeah, it's gone.
Okay.
So what you're saying about I think it kind of answers both your questions. Is asked earlier about what kind of meditation I do, and then what you were saying. Really, the only answer I could kind of give that I think makes sense, if I'm even getting your question or catching your drift correctly, is when I started meditating. I mean, I kind of started by accident, like my senior year of high school. I would just meditate on like the size of the universe. And it was really more than, it was just kind of an interest in it. And I would read all these like scale things about, if the sun was the size of a beach ball, then the earth would be a marble this many feet away. And I was like, oh, that's just, man, okay, I can understand that. And mind you, in high school, this was way before I turned like pre-med. Like I was just a meathead. That's all I like. There was no really intellectual curiosity, but that thinking about like the scale of things, and then again, if the sun was a beach ball, then you put it in Atlanta, the next nearest star would be sitting on like the Golden Gate Bridge, and like thinking about those things, I suppose to me it was just kind of like a drug. Because at that point I had drank, at that point I had smoked pot, and this was just like another. I would think about it and go like, oh, I mean, it was your most stereotypical like how big's the universe, man? Like, nothing groundbreaking. I was 18, and I just did that. And I really liked doing it. So I'd do it every night. I would like sit on like a futon in my bedroom. I'd turn the TV off, and I had a little TV in my room, and I would watch like Comedy Central or something. And I think that was, looking back, that was really the first kind of shift from the quote unquote distraction to kind of going inside. And I had no idea what I was doing. There was no arc, there was no plan. But I did that, and I did that for like 2 years. And it was kind of by accident, but it was at the beginning of my sophomore year of college, so August 2010, that I was doing that again, sitting on my bed, and I started to go inside, and for the first time ever, really started to think about, like, what is this? Like, this, and not the idea of planets and stars, but that which can't be talked about. Consciousness, isness. There isn't nothing going on. There's something. If you just stop, there's something. And that really, I remember that day. It was like Old Testament, New Testament of my life. All of a sudden, I was just like, what is going on? And so that led to me, uh, reading about different types of meditation. And I was like, oh, this is called meditation. And I would try different things, and I would, like someone doing a drug and then chasing the dragon, I would always try to do the same thing again. I'd be like, okay, now I need to think about planets and stars, and I need to think. And of course, that feeling never arose again. And so I would try all these different types of meditation, like staring at one point, like Tritaka, where you stare at one point, or focusing on my breath, or thinking about how weird it is that I'm self-aware. And that was just really this trial and error method I did for years. And this isn't this give it time. It is answering your question, Mr. Barnwell. Is so as I got more into being pre-med and studying more and more, and I wanted to be the best. I wasn't good enough to pass a class. I wanted to get the highest grade. I found that meditation allowed me to study longer. So it was this beautiful thing of experiencing the soul, and like a true Western American, I took it and was like, how do I weaponize this? And so I took it and was like, I can study for 90 minutes. And then if I meditate for 20, I can study for 90 more. And that's how I would study for, not exaggerating, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so it was like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do with it. But I did that, and that helped me get into medical school. But towards the end of college, so now like 2012, 2013, I started to dive deeper and deeper into it. And it was like the guy that invented the Gatling gun, he invented it because he thought it would make war so unpalatable that war would end. And of course, it didn't happen at all. He just became a really wealthy arms dealer. It kind of happened again with nuclear weapons, but it actually worked. They made the most destructive weapon ever. And now, if you look at the gross number of deaths from 1945 to 2022, it has been going down every year. We still have skirmishes, Korea, Vietnam, Grenada, war in the Middle East, Ukraine, whatever. But the total number of deaths and the percentage of deaths of humanity is going down. So all of a sudden, this super strong weapon meant to destroy everything actually started to cause peace. And so this meditation I was discovering was kind of the nuclear weapon. It turned me from It made me a very lethal pre-med competitor, but then the forest fire started to like kill the arsonist. It started to make me realize, wait, there's more to this universe than studying. There's more to this universe than getting grades. There's more to this universe than I want to have a white coat and be Dr. Carrigan. And it all kind of culminated with, graduating, psychedelics, losing a brother, and deciding not to go to medical school. But to answer your question, what I found is I don't think you can force it. And I think it's as Ram Dass said, it's a highly personal journey. My journey is different from yours. But I think what happens is I can only imagine if I lived a different life and was someone else, meditation might pull me in for some other reason. Maybe it would help me deal with anxiety. Maybe it would help me with, I don't know, you're a bodybuilder and it helps you focus on dieting so you can get the gold medal. I don't know. But it like throws out all these sort of like these hooks, and it pulls you in different ways. And if you use it more and more, it actually starts to dissolve the very reason you first started using it. And it sort of awakens something much deeper. And that's why I meditate every day, because I can get caught up in the podcast drive. I got to get bigger guests. I got to get more views. And I'll meditate. Why? I meditate before podcasts because it clears my mind and helps me be a better host. But then when I meditate more and more, I'm like, oh, the podcast doesn't even matter. That's something else. This is a dream. I've lived 1 trillion lives and I'll live 1 trillion more. And then you go deeper. And what's the purpose of that? I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. But it is something that sort of sucks you in. But I think it's very good to do every day because it grounds you and it makes you realize, hey, don't stress about all of this. You can get really caught up in it seems like there's a global lockstep movement to, use the virus that won't be named so you don't get booted to, enact some sort of plan. And it seems like there's censorship and, it gets it gets really hairy. And you're like, oh man, I'm living through crazy times. But like watching a scary movie, every once in a while, you got to like look to the left and the right of the TV and remember that you're in your living room and it's just a movie. To me, that's what meditation does, is it's like, hey, like this is all very thrilling. It's a thrilling ride I'm on Earth in the country of America as a Homo sapien. But when I meditate, even just for 20 minutes a day, pulls me back in more. And it's like, hey, don't get too sucked into it. Play the game. It's fun. And there's a lot to be learned. There's definitely a lot to be learned. It's not a movie in that it's just kind of pointless. There are things to be learned, but always come back to the center. Come back to like the light at the very center and don't let it get to you. That doesn't mean stick your head in the sand and don't be a participator, but go out and play the game, learn. I'm learning today. I'm doing a podcast with you guys, I'm doing a podcast later. Whatever I'm going to learn, whatever I'm learning today or this month or in 2022. But at the same time, don't let it eat you alive. Don't let it destroy you. Don't forget what you're doing. It's not about getting into medical school. It's not about growing the podcast. These are fun little curricula on the side, but keep going deeper. And what do I find deeper? I don't know. Again, I haven't figured that out yet, but I know it's calmness, it's stillness, it's a feeling of unconditional love for everyone. And I don't know if that answers your question or if I'm just rambling to the sound of my own voice, but
Well, I just think that that's great. And David will appreciate this too. Obviously we're talking to an educated individual that knows the difference between curricula and curriculum.
Is there a diff? Did I make up that word?
No, actually, you used it properly.
Oh, all right, good, beautiful.
So maybe you're channeling the archangel of higher learning.
Hopefully, hopefully.
It's an interesting thing, and I don't want to impose anything on anybody. I just have spent a great deal of time trying to understand what's up with all the various different paths, and because I ran the largest called metaphysical, spiritual, holistic bookstore in the world for many years, it brought me into a relationship, and which also was preceding that, to all these various teachers from all different kinds of streams. It would take too long to explain all of that, but I find that it's quite interesting, and I actually got into yoga myself. I became a yoga teacher, but that started very early on. Maybe I will share a story. People like it when I share stories more than when I read extended quotations. But I don't recall. I think I've shared this story, but I've done so many podcasts, I don't know when it was. And But when I was a young man, I read Paramahansa Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi. It became a bestseller in the United States and around the world. And it's a wonderful book. And Paramahansa Yogananda himself, or as he would say it, Paramahansa Yogananda. But he was a truly remarkable soul. And culturally, you have to keep in mind there's a continual cross-pollination between various cultures, not just through interaction, but through reincarnation and karma, that you have people, like, for example, Rudolf Steiner made the point that Emperor Charlemagne was the incarnation of a very high yogi from India, right? It's like, wow, that creates a new level of insight, And then you look at Paramahansa Yogananda, and I can't verify whether or not this is true, but I, from my own experience, think that it is a fact because of his level of development, that Paramahansa Yogananda, he believed himself, or he experienced himself to be a reincarnation of a very, very singularly important figure, even today. And that's William the Conqueror, the Norman who conquered England. And so you look at that and you go, that's fascinating that he would say that. And you look at the diversity that manifests, and you if you approach it from spiritual science, you know that we go through these 2,160-year ages, astronomical ages, in which it creates a new context for us to incarnate into, so that there would be something of value for us. And so if you keep that in mind, and you know that we all have had many, many incarnations, although not an infinite number like Tommy was making the point, at least according to occult science, because there's this very specific theme of manifestation that we're involved in, that I've presented from every possible angle I can come up with, but that we're in the fourth world. We're experiencing the human realm, the fourth mystery of birth and death. It was preceded by 3 stages, which Rudolf Steiner describes as Old Saturn, Old Sun, and Old Moon. Old Saturn being the primal warmth that is the foundation of the physical being. The Old Sun is the primal etheric, which is the foundation of light and expression of the logos. And then the mystery of number. And then the 3rd stage is the mystery of affinity, which is the astral. And so we share the astral with the animals, we share the etheric of Old Sun with the plant kingdom, and the Old Saturn we have in common with the mineral kingdom. But these should be conceived of as states of consciousness. And if you get into a deeper study of this through Theosophy or Rudolf Steiner, you'll see, or in just scripture, that you have the manifestation of a threefold expression of consciousness, and that the fourfold is like the Grail, that is the repository of that threefold manifestation of the Trinity. And so you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so the Holy Spirit would pertain to the astral, the Son or Logos to the etheric, and the Father principle pertains to the primal physical, or the manifestation of the physical. And so you could see that the physical world is basically a experience of a densification of the world of spirit. So that we're always present in these realms, but that's the thing that we know the least. And it behooves one, as far as the world evolution as a whole, to at least set aside a few moments a day for a spiritual pursuit, like what our friend Tommy's doing. Whether or not you even know why you're doing it, or all the details regarding karma, reincarnation, and all that, that's all well and good, but at least say grace at your meals, that you're acknowledging the spiritual world, because the spiritual world does not like to be ignored. And I think that a lot of the struggles that we're going through, as Rudolf Steiner described in that lecture, going into World War I, is that why are we going through what we're going through right now? Because we've been so distracted with commerce and everything else. And mind you, I've said time and time again that the abstract mind, the materialistic abstract mind, always resolves in conflict. That there is no resolution of that modality as a state of consciousness. It's insufficient to be able to maintain its connection to the divine spiritual beings. It's not there, and as far as you want to take it, utilitarianism will not get you a ticket. It's like getting the old adage of passing the camel through the eye of a needle. There's not sufficient levity in those concepts. It's all gravity. It's all, we're going into entropy. Well, eventually, what do the physicists say? That the universe is eventually going to collapse. It's like in entropy. It's like, oh, that's a wonderful thought. But yet, if you look at the concepts presented in the East, that the universe passes in and out of what they call Leia, a period of rest. And the period of rest between these stages of old Saturn, old Sun, old Moon, and then Earth, it's a period of rest for certain levels of being. And that's the challenge, is that just because it's at a period of rest for the angels, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a period of rest for the higher beings. So they have their own Leia. It's called Pralaya. And that whole idea of Pralaya is embodied within the concept of meditation in the classical explanation as given into the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, that meditation is the cessation of the modifications of the mind.
I'm getting feedback again. Do you care if I go use the restroom real quick? I didn't have anything. I didn't have anything brilliant to say. I was like,
yeah, that's fine.
All right. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Yes. Well, there's a pralaya for you. He had to go to the restroom. Pralaya means rest. So, well, how about you, David? What's going on there, my friend?
Oh, I like having guests on this show. I can sit back and sip my lemsips and ward off the endless germs of living in modern Britain. After 2 hours preaching, this is very welcome. Oh God, where do you begin with all of that stuff? William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror was a bastard. Him
in more ways than one.
Oh, in every way, with his nasty cronies, dragging the concept of serfdom onto a much more advanced country than he could have dreamt of when he came across. He got sod off. You know what I think about 1066 and all that. I've had another go at him in my next book. Sod off, William the Conqueror. I remember reading Autobiography of a Yogi. Wasn't it a wonderful book? I just, I couldn't put it down. And all these, in my edition, there were wonderful photographs at the end of his guru, who had one of the biggest noses in human history, as far as I remember, and stories which I wasn't sure should have been taken at face value. I mean, his guru had trouble with his wife, who didn't realize he was such an advanced being. I actually found an addendum to this story somewhere else, and I've been sitting here thinking, where else did I find that? I can't remember at the minute. And it was I bet every Hindu husband wishes this would happen. They were asleep in bed one night, and the devas, not the big ones, I imagine, the little ones, had managed to float, what was it, Sri Yukteswar, into the air and were paying obeisance to him, and his wife woke up to see all this going on and realised he wasn't just an annoying other half. He was actually a Mahaguru. So, well, there we are. That's solved then. Less rails in the front room after that. And yeah, I remember. Oh, God, he looked so good. Yogananda looked so good. He looked like a yogi, and he was just kind and gentle. And the only thing I didn't really find answered by that book was, why did they need to have a Vedanta mission to the West, which was sort of posited at the beginning and then consummately not answered for the next couple of 100 pages. So, yeah, as I say, that I hope young Tommy's listening to this. What's my own view on history and the ancestry of our noble nations? They're all bastards, and we've got to stop listening to them and taking their over-militaristic, nasty nonsense into our lives so much. With deep respect and love to Yogananda. Where do we go from that? I'm wondering if Tommy isn't sort of overawed or shocked at this show. Two old goats talking turkey. I hope it's not too much of a traumatic experience. It would be for me.
I've talked to older guys than you on the podcast, so it's fine.
Yeah, you're
right.
He's a veteran.
It's down, is it? And I know John's older than me. I can live with. But as a sage, oh no, what am I thinking about? I don't know. Somebody called me a radical traditionalist the other day. I don't rather dislike that. I rather like that. It doesn't ring entirely true because I think our ancestors are bastards. Nobody actually bothered to ask me that bit. But I sort of like the balance. I think I've said this on this show before. Taking the best from tradition, and there's a remarkable amount of best, but not being a stick in the mud, not dyed in the wool, slave of the past. I mean, too many people these days worship history as opposed to, and they're my conservative friends, don't attack me after the show. And I'm thinking of the heathen community. I was told censoriously 6 months ago that if you want to worship Thor, not something I imagine the vast majority of people have in mind, but if you want to worship the god Thor, it was only done according to so-and-so, some scholar I hadn't heard of from Scandinavia, if you built a wooden church. Do they have churches? Of 3 staves. And I thought, no, you're worshipping history. You're not worshipping the idea, the energy, the force, the power that you're talking about. What you're doing is just putting history together and thinking you're doing the same. Well, a bloody lot has happened since those days. Yes, and I'm sure Thor is perfectly aware of them. And right, let's have a go at America and upset you two. And I hate Marvel comics, and I hate the Marvel universe. Can't they leave Thor alone? Have some respect. If you can't do anything else, have some respect. This Aussie guy on the verge of working out all the time. Stop it. And apparently some black lesbian has taken over Asgard or something. Love, you can't be the king of Asgard, love. Live with it. And you can't have a queen. Words mean things. You know what I'm talking about? So, all this is nonsense. And it's disrespectful to European tradition. So where do I go from there? Oh, right, John's disapproving. I'll get off, John. I'll get off. There we are.
So no disrespect to Queen Boudica, but she's Saxon anyways.
Yeah, mere Saxons. They came here causing trouble. They can start off what's the greatest game in Wales to this day? Burning down English holiday homes, and long may it continue. I'm thinking of moving with my partner to Edinburgh next year, and one of the first things maybe the end of this year, one of the first things I'm going to say loudly is I'm not English, because you have to. There's a survival technique in this part of the world, and I mean they'll know it from my name because people will get it from my name, but from this sort of accent, I'm all right. What's going on there? So I'll burn my British passport and shout really loudly, I'm not English. There's a bit of me there, but not all of it.
Just get her T-shirt.
Hoots. I can't do the Scottish thing. I'm sorry. Hoots. And all Calvinists, oh my God, I'm going out of me dip. The Kirk spiritual that can't have a good time even when it's having a good time. And
Well,
that's why they can't
maybe
celebrate Christmas properly, can they? Sorry.
maybe you just need to eat some haggis.
Oh,
gross.
all these regional delicacies that make you want to throw. I mean, I remember being presented with an actual haggis, thank you, a couple of years ago by a Scot, thank you. I haven't spoken to him since. And it was this sort of weird bag of stuff, and you could see a bit of potato. You had to bloody cut it open. You could see a bit of potato, and I think I spotted a pea. And I said, well, what's the rest of it then? And he said, innards, which I translated. I'm very good at Captain Kirk's and Captain Jane, what was it? You know, those translation things they have. I think it meant innards. And I didn't want to eat innards. I'm sorry, offal is disgusting. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get to invited to any Rabbi Burns parties, am I? But no, we're looking forward to that. I mean, as I was saying at the beginning of the show, you've got to remember United Kingdom doesn't mean one country. And if we're looking at different countries with one monarch, and thereby hangs a tale, and the cultural trauma that manages to produce, accompanied by the fact that that's a good stance for any radical traditionalist to come from, darling, I'm traumatized. You know, then we're actually beginning to get somewhere. I mean, it was bad enough. As I say, I'm not the David I normally am. I mean, I'm sorry, 2 hours preaching before this show. I'm frazzled. And all I can notice is this collar going in that direction as I'm looking at my own reflection on this screen. And every time I come up against the screen, I seem to go cross-eyed or boss-eyed. So that seems to be happening. It might just be the laptop, of course, but that seems to be happening. But 2 hours of talking about the gospel to the Persian Christian Fellowship can humble a man. So that's going on at the minute, and I'm thinking, gosh, I'd like, I suppose, to explore, because both of you have those interests too, what we meant by tradition, what we could mean by tradition. I mean, Yogananda, to get back to that, why does the West need a Vedantic mission? I wasn't sure of that. I remain unsure of that. Don't like William the Conqueror, as I've just said. Evans Wentz, The Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries, a very great scholar, and I love that book. My copy got stolen, bless you, many years ago, and he wrote a couple of commentaries on Yogananda, where he took the paranormal stuff. As I said on the other engagement just before this, I do accept the paranormal. Somebody said to me recently, it's just what the brain does. Love, that's true of everything. Right, back to square one. I do accept the paranormal. I do accept the supernatural, though I think we've got to be, and that's an upgrade from the paranormal, I think we've got to be very careful. You know, the minute we're using human words and human vocabularies and language games for things, for things that were never designed to be discussed. I think we've got to be very, very careful. I loved what you were saying. Was it high anxiety or something? High mysteriousness of greys and aliens. Why can't they all just sod off and mind their own business? Who asked them to come here in the first place? Sling your up, mate. No, I mean, the demonic is clearly at work there. I'm sorry. I know I'll finish, John. Sorry. I mean, there were two scientists, NASA, employed two scientists, one of, I can't remember, Jacques Vallée, who wrote a book called Agents of Deception, who said very clearly in that book, I read it many years ago, do forgive me, nothing is happening now that wasn't happening during the times of the witch trials. And I thought, yes, we've actually got somewhere with that. That is deeply disturbing, including cattle mutilations and people getting invited onto strange craft where something that doesn't resemble anything medical is going on, but something resembling a ritual is very clearly going on. I find that sinister. And the fact they don't... Can't you give the cure to cancer? You know, if you're so ahead, give us the cure to cancer. Why do you need to keep talking about religion? Why do you need to keep attacking Christianity? You know, why? Give us some advanced knowledge that we can verify, then everything's hunky-dory. That is not happening. Anyway, back to Evans Wentz. Evans Wentz wrote about the many paranormal events that are enumerated in the Autobiography of a Yogi, I thought from rather too lofty a position. You can't really, for modern Western audiences and the way modern Western culture has gone, just leave it there. You know, oh, that happened, isn't that interesting? Yes, it happens in the East a lot. I do feel we need to be more explanatory about what we're doing in an age which doesn't listen. I mean, I got attacked on Facebook 2 days ago, yet again, by someone who was telling me what Catholic priests think. So she knew nothing about my biography, she knew nothing about my work, but was attacking me anyway, because that's what Catholic priests think. You know, please, love, darling, stop it. You know, so if that's the age we live in now, I do think it's sort of beholden. You use the word behooves, I'm using the word beholden us to explain 101 why that's important and why maybe someone might get benefit from it. I'll get, John is wagging his head at me, I'll get off. I'll just say one thing. When I used to go to the Buddhist Society in Eccleston Square behind Victoria Station, and there were some remarkable people there. Christmas Humphreys used to be the head of the Buddhist Society in Britain. What an incredible guy. I mean, that's solid. There was a German Zen nun, Miyokio Nii, who got trapped because of something called World War II in Japan. So she decided to become a Zen nun, and that was the best decision you made, darling. And it reminded me of someone, you know, they always had Q&A at the end of their sessions, and someone asked one of the learned teachers at the Buddhist Society, it reminded me of what Tommy said, how big is the universe? To which somebody chimed up and said, it's pretty big, which I thought was the wisest thing I've ever heard. I'm sorry, how can you actually disagree with that? Right, John, I'll shut up, handing back. There we are.
Yeah, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Yeah, well, anyways, I was doing that Yogananda thing because I was going to tell a story, and I got, as is frequently the case on these informal chats we have here, a chinwag, as David likes to call them. We tend to go down rabbit holes and get in various diverse corridors, and maybe that's what makes it interesting in the first place. But I want to get to our guest here rather than me. I can talk about myself all day long, and I want to see if coming from where he is, what he sees as a way forward is in terms of consciousness, not all this stuff with politics and all the other distractions, but it's in terms of consciousness.
You're asking, how do we move forward with consciousness? Is that what you're asking? Yeah, I'm definitely, even just in the last 6 months to a year, I've kind of even moved further inward in that, you know, we look at what's going on right now, and okay, so let's instead of saying where are we right now, let's go back to like 1942 or something, right, where we know the outcome. Now, you can imagine that they all had these fears, right? There's this crazy, you know, Aryan Reich. They have wildly advanced technology. As Norm Macdonald said, they're a country the size of the state of Maine, and they tried to take over the world, and they almost did. It's terrifying, all right? Japan attacks us. All right, so we got to stop just doing the Lend-Lease program to Great Britain. We got to actually get in the war. All right, FDR's got to stop the isolationism. And it's this crazy thing, you know. Curtis LeMay, who later became the Secretary of the Air Force under JFK and Chief of Strategic Air Command, our whole kind of military, or our nuclear, I guess, tipped spear. He said he'll never forget when he first got to Europe, and the rate at which we are losing bombers to the rate at which we are building bombers, that the United States will not have an Air Force in 30 days. And that kind of shaped his Cold War paranoia to always have overwhelming force, because he never forgot that, right? I mean, you see it with people that grow up in poverty, and they're still pinching pennies even when they've got $1 billion, and it's because it was traumatizing. So the point of what I'm saying all of this is, things looked horrible then because things were horrible. Now, let's pretend that you could go back and tell them, what's the best case scenario? They'd be like, oh, well, best case scenario would be, we somehow beat the Nazis and we beat the Japanese. And you'd be like, all right, cool. Then what happens? Well, I could tell them. I could be like, hey, I'm from the future. So you do beat them, and you enter a golden age of American industrial and economic might, and with bases around the world, and I guess our own flavor of imperialism. Like, oh, that's awesome. Oh yeah, man, it gets crazy. You guys go to the moon. You end up winning the Cold War. It takes like 45 years to end up winning the Cold War. You guys invent the internet, and you get these cell phones, and you get oh wow, that's crazy. But yeah, if you're, let's say you're 20 in 1940, well, now we're seeing World War II veterans die faster than ever, which is that's just age. It's just what it is, right? I mean, at a certain point, all the Civil War veterans were dying. At a certain point, all the World War I veterans were dying. In 20, 30 years, all of a sudden, all the Vietnam veterans will be dying. So what was it? So what was the goal? And I'm not making light of it. Well, obviously we put an end to Nazi Germany. All right, we stopped the concentration camps. All right, that's fantastic. Okay, great. You could, you built a society grows great. What's the quote? A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they won't sit under. So they're older, but they're like, hey, I set my kids up. The baby boomer generation. And they have their kids, and I procreated and multiplied and was a good Catholic. All right, all that good stuff. But eventually, you die. You clock out, right? You check your ticket, you punch your ticket. So what I look at right now is, so what's best case scenario? Somehow the people of the world rise up, and so I don't get, visited by law enforcement authorities in a nonviolent way. The people of the world rise up, right? We bind together and we go, hey, what's going on right now? This isn't good. This seems like a new form of fascism, global fascism. Best case scenario, everyone kind of guilty of everything from the wars in the Middle East to lying to robbing the entire United States in 2008. All these things. What if we somehow overtook all the evil in the world and we set up a new age of a golden America and a golden world? Well, even in the best case scenario, we still just get old and die. Okay, but what if you're Jeff Bezos? What if you're an Elon Musk? What if you got $300 billion? Sure, man, you get stem cell therapy. You get NAD drips every day. You get the best HGH and testosterone replacement therapy, right? And as things go on, maybe you can actually go in and start manipulating your genes like Aubrey de Grey. Man, we could push life extension. Maybe you could push it to 150, 200, maybe even 1,000, right? Organ replacement. I mean, what if you could upload your brain into a silicon computer? Well, now we're looking at indefinite. Well, man, you're not going to get bored. You're not going to get bored. You can live forever. Now you're a trillionaire just living on interest, and you want to go discover other planets and other stars, start cracking the code more into quantum physics and discover alien life. Like, the story of the universe isn't over. Oh, man, there's a lot of chapters left. To what end? Well, eventually there's the heat death, right? The big freeze. Others say it's the big crunch where it will come back together. Okay. Best case scenario, you become some deity plugged into a supercomputer the size of the sun, and you somehow manage to escape this universe when it's collapsing into another one. Okay. And then what? So what I'm getting at is no matter how successful you are at just keeping the game going, it eventually ends. And so even now I look at it as like, I was so, kind of getting better when I moved home. That was like my own hero's journey. That was not documented, but I know that like I lived through my own like odyssey of losing weight, of getting sober, of doing therapy, of sort of building this podcast. I never thought I was going to live on my own again. I mean, my brain was destroyed. I mean, I thought I was going to be like in an institution. And to building the podcast, to getting better guests, to living on my own now and dieting and exercising, and wow, this is okay, cool. All right, so let's keep this going. What would happen next? Well, I'd love for the podcast to get bigger. I'd like to make a pretty penny. Who doesn't? I want some toys. I also want to make a lot of money so that I can find that the answer isn't in the toys, but I think I need to experience that. Okay, let's keep this going. Well, I don't know. I'd like to, become a billionaire. I'd like to revolutionize mental health care. I'd like to do something so that my brother's death wasn't in vain. All right, cool. And then what? Where does it go? I don't know. Maybe I become some superhuman like Bezos and we're out discovering the universe at light speed. And then what? Ultimately, even in the best case scenario, right? Even when you win the Super Bowl, and then what? You got the trophy. Well, now you're just looking forward to the next season. Let's win it again. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with finding, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. But so to answer your question, I think that you play the game long enough and eventually you have to realize that the answer isn't out here. It's a very fun game. You can make it a very fun game. For some people, it's living hell. They're, in third world nations. They have no access to clean water. You die in Auschwitz. Like, for some people, for a lot of people, it's not a fun game. For me, for a long time, it wasn't a fun game. But no matter how fun the game is, you do eventually hit a point where it's like, okay, it's like what Ram Dass said. There's the phony holy, but then there's the phony unholy. And he goes, you wake up, you don't quite become enlightened. You wake up enough and you try to go back to sleep. And you can try to go back to sleep, but you'll never actually go back to sleep. You can, it's the dark night of the soul. And he goes, and they'll try to squeeze a couple more experiences out. Maybe I got to get that red convertible. Maybe I need to leave my wife and, get a hot young chick. Maybe I need to, but you'll never quite get it. And eventually you go, all right, I'll go inside. And you go inside and that's where you find it. What is it? I don't know. So to me, there's nothing that needs to be done. No one can force you to find this journey. You have to go in on your own. If someone forces you to do it, you're just going to reject it on the premise of don't tell me what to do. But eventually, no matter who you are, eventually Elon Musk is going to be sitting there, age 500, worth $1 trillion, set up we became a multiplanetary species. He did the thing. But you can only get laid so many times. You can only get drunk so many times. You can only hear a great song so many times before you go, okay. It's like the party animal you knew in college who eventually settles down and has a family. And you're like, I never would have seen that coming. And eventually they're like, okay, I want something more real. I want something more fulfilling than just partying and sex. So to me, we will eventually go there. And if you don't go there, I think you die. And as Ram Dass said, send him back in. You go on the ride again. And eventually, who knows? Maybe I've done this 1,000 times and I'm finally at the point where I'm like, hey, I don't think the answer is out here in the physical world. So to answer your question without really answering your question, I don't think there's anything to be done. I think we all have our own thing to do, and we will approach it when we approach it. We will accomplish it when we accomplish it. Maybe you're enlightened at age 5. Maybe it takes you your 1,000th lifetime to finally become Ram Dass. I think that's all there is. And everything else, whether we're Homo sapiens on Earth or whether we're weird floating octopus on a Jupiter-like planet, or whether we're whatever, or we're in a universe where you can't even explain it because their laws of physics are completely alien to us, I think it's all the same thing. It's a game you play until you've played it so much that you're like, there's got to be something else. And then you go into that which can't be talked about, can't be thought about. It's just experience. It's consciousness. And that, I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know if there's an answer to your question. I think it's a personal journey inwards.
It's a personal thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
We all each have our own context of filters. And so these filters enable us to juggle our reality so that it can come out with some kind of semblance of comfort, right? And so we're all operating under shared assumptions. You know, we have a context in which we say, okay, here we are. There's people around me, and I interact with them. But if you look beneath the hood, even a little bit, say for example, when Rudolf Steiner gets into explaining the nature of the illusion and the Maya, as it's called in yoga, when you get into it, he says, well, for example, you could look, and I'm not quoting, I'm just, kind of giving you the gist of what he says. He says you could look at a rainbow and you could see that the rainbow arises because of certain angular relationships of light, and that when those conditions change, then the rainbow goes away. He says, well, that's how you can view your physical existence. And it's like, I mean, that's kind of a
Can you,
if that doesn't blow your mind, I don't know
you-
what does.
can you say that again? What the rainbow is?
Went right by you. Yeah, the rainbow arises because of certain relationships between the atmosphere and the light of the sun, and that when those conditions change, the rainbow goes away. He says, well, basically, and I'm just giving you the context. He says, well, that's the way you can view your physical existence, is that it's here because of the relationships between different factors, shall we say.
Different realms.
So, that our experience of this is illusory, that there's our relationship to time and space are both illusionary, and any deeper teacher, whether a guru or occultist, what have you, would concur with what I was saying.
Is that like what word am I looking for? What are the I'm having a complete brain fart. What stars? What constellations? Yeah, constellation. It's like constellations. Like they're not actually real. Like they're all completely wildly far apart. But it's just by living on Earth we see, like the belt or the little dip or whatever, right? It's kind of like that, where if you went on a different star system or if you went to a different galaxy, that no longer exists, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, I mean, you could try to translate it into sensory levels of thought, but like if you look at, for example, the Pleiades, they always call the 7 stars of the Pleiades. Well, now we know it's not just 7 stars; that they're like, we're looking at that galactic phenomena. That's what that is. It's but because of the great distance, a galaxy can appear as a star or a cluster of galaxies. So yeah, there's that whole spatial illusory aspect of it. But no, more on a more fundamental level is that this whole physical existence is Maya. This is the realm of birth and death. This is where we get to have this experience that enables us to have an experience of being separate from everything else. And because of that separation, we've been able to achieve a level of freedom as beings, so that we have freedom to make mistakes, to have freedom of thought, and that's the gist of what that is. But that the whole idea that this separation itself is an illusion, but it's beneficial if we make proper use of that sense of separation. So it's getting late in our podcast now, and I kind of figured we'd only get close to certain things. I have all these great plans about what I think is going to happen, and I never get around to my notes. But I don't want to forget to share with you that you could get to Tommy's wonderful work. I put links below so that you can get access to Tommy's world, and he even you can get merchandise even. That's kind of,
Well,
I haven't even got that sophisticated, but
those
TPC hats and stuff like that. That's cool.
Those are my graphic designs that
Yeah, that's
eventually
great.
just turned into hoodies because I didn't know what else to do with the designs.
But so I want to share with you also that we're here with the Reverend David William Parry, who's the author of 3 books that are available on Amazon. The Grammar of Witchcraft, which is, no, it's not a grimoire, it's not a how-to book. This is a Shakespearean study from an individual I consider to be a master of the English language and the way in which he can turn a phrase. And here's his Shakespearean-esque poetry, Caliban's Redemption, and his 3rd volume, his what you could call his principal work, Mount Athos Inside Me, Essays on Religion, Swedenborg and the Arts, edited by the very talented Daniela Irendust. And in this book, David is giving very cogent reflections on his path in life and using the sacred island of Mount Athos of the Orthodox tradition as a touch base for a great deal of thought. And so those, like I said, are available. You could find links below, and also they're available on Amazon. And as for myself, I put shuffling around here, I have 2 books, The Arcana of the Grail Angel, Spiritual Science of the Holy Blood and of the Holy Grail, a study developed out of the work of Rudolf Steiner of the underground streams of esoteric Christianity, which flowed from the Brotherhood of the Holy Grail to the Order of the Knights Templar and the True Rosicrucian Order. And this has a foreword by Douglas Gabriel, who is my best friend and one of the 2 principals, along with his diligent wife, Tyla, of American Intelligence Media, that works together with Michael McKibben's Americans for Innovation to bring you primary documentation of all the unusual things that are going on in the world. And my 2nd book is The Arcana of Light on the Path. It's more of a meditative tool with a foreword by the late William Bento, the noted astrosopher and anthroposophist. And my books are available on eBay if you're in the US. If you're outside the US, you can contact me directly through my academia link below, or you can also contact me by private message on eBay, on Facebook. And I'm trying to think. And also, we have links for donations below for myself and for Reverend David William Parry, and also for Tommy. So if you want to throw some a cup of coffee our way, that'd be muchly appreciated. And but I'm trying to make sure I don't forget to include things. I usually forget something, but that's just the way it is in my part of the universe at this point. But and so Tommy, I guess I leave it to you if there's anything I omitted that you would like to let people know about, please.
If you want to find me, it's on Rumble or BitChute and Odyssey and Spotify, not on YouTube because I got permanently banned. And so people have asked me, I can't find you on YouTube. And I'm like, well, I've been nuked from there. So go find me on Rumble. It's Tommy's Podcast, TPC. The logo is just white text on a black background. It just says TPC. Go there. There's a lot of crazy interviews with a lot of interesting people, and it's pretty much how we talk today. It's about the same as my podcast. This is just the ramblings of an insane person, and I managed to pawn it off as intelligent discussion because I have unintelligent guests. But yeah, man, aside from that, I don't know. Go enjoy it. It's all free.
Excellent. Well, it's become a tradition here that we like to have Reverend David share with us a prayer to kind of consecrate our efforts here in the world of consciousness of which we've been referring. So he usually has some kind of closing remark to precede the prayer. But that being said,
way of telling me to shut up.
I would never do that.
Just one or two quick reflections. I love the rainbow thing. I remember studying them, the Buddhist boomies, states of consciousness which are there but aren't there but are there. I remember coming away feeling very enlightened about sort of states of being which point inwards simply because of what they are. I know, you know, the richness of the East must never be forgotten. And what it's doing to complement, maybe it's not all one huge war, maybe it complements what we're doing over here. And yeah, it's a shame we didn't get more to sort of what everybody's doing in terms of practice, but I think this has been quite a fascinating show in all sorts of ways. My friends, we're rapidly coming to the end, and my brain is just about to fry, so this is a good time for prayer. It's great to be back with John Barnwell for yet another year of no holds barred singing and dancing between various topics, which I enjoy to the hilt. I mean, I apologize for not being available to John and our listeners during. I'm clergy, have some mercy. During the holidays, what do you want? Take the shirt off me back, for God's sake. And I've got a family, you know what I mean? I've got a partner, so, you know, I need a life. So it's nice to finally have time to be back. It's my fault we weren't back earlier, so blame me, but it's great to be back with John. Wonderful to have met Tommy. And let's be grateful for the time that we spent today. I mean, we've talked about things of monumental importance in a pleasant, meandering fashion. And what's wrong with that? We've talked about the external. And I want to be one of those squids, what did he say? Floating around in an atmosphere somewhere.
Yeah.
Or I want to know the secrets of new virility. Tom, I'm hoping Tommy emails me that afterwards. I need it too. We talked about the miracles of the external world. They are. Let's not minimize. They are, but not nearly to the level and quality and depth of the internal world. In the West, in the Abrahamic traditions, we would say that somebody once not only pointed to the way, the truth, and the life, but actually that person was the way, the truth, and the life. My friends, in the days ahead, until we meet, may the light of that path and the light of that person at the end of that path be in your hearts and in your minds and giving you strength every single hour of every day until we meet again. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Well, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough. And for everybody that showed up and for everybody that didn't, have a happy new year.
Thank you.